Hi, welcome to Angela's Pantry Obsession. I'm Angela, and we're in the kitchen today with many food preservation projects. Here in the sink I have, I purchased 20 pounds of jalapenos, but I did reserve several for a different preservation project. So I'm thinking we probably have in here 12 to 15 pounds of jalapenos, and we're going to use these to make candied jalapenos, one of my absolute favorite canning recipes that I do every year, and my husband's, and many others, which is why I do so many. I gift quite a bit away. This isn't all just for my home. So I have in here them all sitting in water. They've been washed. I've looked through them. I'm going to be cutting the tops off and setting those aside for my compost and putting in another bowl just the whole entire jalapeno. And then we're going to be moving over to my KitchenAid, where I'm going to put them through and it's going to slice it up, I'm hoping, into nice rings for me, so I don't have to do them by hand. I'm keeping the seeds in my jalapenos because that of course makes it much spicier, which I'm okay with doing because the amount of sugar that goes in this recipe really helps to offset that spice. So if you feel like you really can't handle any heat, I don't know that this recipe would really be for you, but if you'd like to try it, because maybe there are ways where you have found you love the flavor of jalapenos but just not the spice, then you might want to take the time to remove the seeds and the ribs from inside the jalapeno. I'm not doing that. It's gonna go in whole for my my project today. So that's basically the first step. This is going to take quite a while, so of course you don't have to watch me do the whole thing, but I'll show you, a few that I do. I will say I 100% recommend wearing gloves. Now, it's one thing when you're working with just a few jalapenos, you can certainly get away with not wearing gloves. And even though I'm not really chopping these all by myself by hand, I'm still going to be touching them quite a bit. And that capsaicin is no joke, let me tell you. And the amount that I'm cooking today can really start to irritate the eyes, the nose. So if you have anybody sensitive to any change in the environment and air, the condition within your home, you either might want to do this on a day where they're not home, or just make sure you've got some very good ventilation going on. At one point, once I start cooking this, it has to simmer in that sugary vinegar brine. I will have a fan going in the background. I might even have the vent on my stove going. I could even open my kitchen window here if I need to. I have learned from years past that it gets quite evident that I've got a lot of jalapenos on the stove top. So just, word of precaution, just be careful. Now, if you're doing one batch, I would say, of course, it probably won't be that bad. But I'm not sure how many batches I'm doing. I'm going to get these all processed. I will then measure out how many cups of jalapenos I have to see then how many batches I am doing. I just double checked the recipe, and it's 3 pounds of jalapenos is considered one batch in the recipe. And so I have roughly 5 batches here if I had to guess. Again, I didn't completely weigh everything out. I purchased 20 pounds of jalapenos, I took some out. I did not weigh it, but we will once we get to that next step. Holy jalapeno, that was a very quick, easy process to use my KitchenAid. You could also use a food processor. If you're doing more than one batch, I definitely recommend it. So I'm going to go ahead and weigh out how much jalapenos I have so that I know what I'm working with. Oh, also, side note, all of these jalapeno tops, there is such thing as strawberry top jelly, there's corn cob jelly, there's apple scrap jelly. So I bet you could make jalapeno jelly out of just the tops from this. I'm not going to. This is just gonna go into my compost. I think it might be something that I entertain for next year, especially for gift giving. I just can't create another project for myself right now. But I just wanted to suggest that I believe it's probably doable. You might need to do some research on it. It could very well be in a canning book too already, I'm not sure. Okay, so I'm gonna get these weighed out. We'll see how I am gonna kind of do it very loosely. I am pretty strict when it comes to making sure I am safely canning, but I'm not going to weigh out this entire batch. I'm going to weigh one of these, and then I will refill as I'm dumping into my container to give me an idea of how much I might have. I'm gonna get my gloves back on. I also do not recommend working with these gloves. Oh my gosh, they're a pain. But my, is it vinyl gloves? They're not latex. Whatever the other material is, I'm completely out. So I have to use these disposable gloves. I know it's common in the food industry, but oh my gosh. I think it was the most infuriating thing of this whole process. Fighting with my gloves the whole time. Okay. Also, make sure you wash really well your KitchenAid, the knobs and everything, because even with gloves on, I'm touching the KitchenAid and buttons and all kinds of stuff. And you don't want to go with your bare hands to go use it and then later on rub your eyes or face or something and have much of a surprise forgetting what you did. I'm gonna say it's looking like 4 quarts is going to be 3 pounds, which is perfect. For measuring purposes. A little bit more. Perfect. So yeah, I'm gonna say 4 quarts is 3 pounds. 1 batch is 3 pounds. So I need to see how many of these I can fill so I know how many batches I'm doing. Unfortunately, I only have 1 bowl this size, so I'm gonna have to sort of swap back and forth. So I'm gonna go get my really big stock pot. So 4.5 batches. So I'm going to just do a straight 5. And the reason for that is because I actually like having the leftover brine as well. The leftover brine makes fantastic marinade for chicken, pork, beef, fish. It doesn't matter what you're marinating. It's fantastic. And so it actually even recommends it in the book that if you have leftover, to just go ahead and can it up. So this way I know there's no guessing. If I was slightly over in one of my scoops, that kind of helps to offset that as well. So I'm going to times my batch by 5, which means in canning math, we should get all right, if we're canning in half pints, which we are, we will get about 1 batch, you will get 5 half pints. We're times it by 5, so we should get 25 half pints. This might sound crazy. I don't know if that's going to be enough. I wonder how much I did last year. I need to start keeping a record. Well, here's what we'll do. I also don't know if this is the recipe that I used, come to think of it, because I know for a fact I canned in pints, and I wouldn't take it upon myself to assume what the processing time is for pints. This is saying to do it in half pints, and then it gives me the processing time for that. So, but in any event, we'll see what we come out with. It could be more, certainly won't be less. I can probably guarantee that. Now we will be simmering this for a little bit, not much, but then through the processing time, of course, the jalapenos will kind of shrink up just a little bit. So, but either way, we should still get at least 25 half pints. Might just have to not be so loosey-goosey with it, and I might have to kind of stash a few just to make sure I have some until next year. But I started a canning notebook this year and I'm writing everything down. So next year I'll know for sure if this was enough for me, how much I did, the recipe that I used, which I am using the recipe from Not Your Mama's Canning book. It's becoming one of my favorite books actually. There's so many recipes in here. I did the tikka masala recipe not long ago. That video's probably up, so go take a look at that. I've used the recipe in here for canning hummus ready chickpeas. I've also, I do want to also try the black bean chili in here. My mom's going on a vegan diet again. We all went vegan several years ago for about a year and a half, and she wants to do it again. And so I'm trying to do some things for her so her pantry will be stocked for the winter. And so I'm gonna go ahead and try this black bean chili for her and us. I mean, we love it here too. So I really am loving this book and I definitely recommend it. So I have another project going right now, my corn relish. So once that is done and I can free up a burner, we'll get ready going to step 2 of the jalapenos. We are going to get this on the stovetop to get going into my jars. So I want to take a minute and reflect here for a second. We are making candied jalapenos. So that means they are sweet. So don't go into a diabetic coma when I tell you how much sugar is in here. One batch, 3 pounds of jalapenos and 6 cups of sugar. Now, yes, let's, because that's a lot. I agree. And in fact, I agreed so much that the first time I made it, I did it as usual because I think I did 1 or 2 batches the first time. Found out we loved it, so I did more, of course, the following years. I did cut back on the sugar because I like the heat and it doesn't bother me to have a little bit of a spicier jar. Also, it bothers me to use, in this particular case, I'd have to use 30 cups of sugar. I'm working out of my 5-gallon bucket that I use to rotate through my baker's center. I don't think I have even 30 cups in there between what's there and at my baker's center. I'd have to go dig out my other bucket, and I don't know that I have the energy to do that today. So I'm actually going to measure and see how many cups I do have. I generally reduce it by about 1.5 cups. So instead of 6 cups, it would be 4.5 cups for every batch. So I would need somewhere around, what, 22 cups or something. So let's see how much sugar I actually have. That's all the sugar I'm going to need for the projects I'm doing today. So I hope I have enough. I have turbinado sugar, but I don't want to use that for something like this. That's my finishing sugar. And brown sugar, but I don't want to use brown sugar. So yeah, let me see how much sugar I have. Okay, so I need 2 cups of vinegar. So let me start with that. Big batch canning days, it's like you have to guess where you put something. I try to stay organized and clean up after everything, but I'm still, searching for stuff. So we need, if I'm 5 times in the recipe, I need 10 cups of vinegar. This recipe calls for a cider vinegar, so like apple cider vinegar, for instance. I don't like apple cider vinegar at all, so I sub it for just plain white vinegar. You can do that if you wish. If you prefer the apple cider vinegar, then of course go ahead and use that. You probably cannot use your homemade fermented apple cider vinegar. That is likely not going to be as acidic as you need it to be. If you have test strips, go ahead and use those to check the acidity level. Otherwise, don't chance it. Just use, you know, a store-bought 5% vinegar. 10 cups of vinegar. And how many cups did I say we needed? 20. Let's start with 22. This is my half cup measure, naturally. Oh, you know what? One. $19, $20, $21. Well, that's probably a half a cup. We're gonna call that good. Okay, so we need to bring all of this up to a boil with our seasonings. And what was it? It was turmeric, celery seed, and garlic. So half a teaspoon of turmeric. Oh, yep, Angie, you're 5 times seeing this. So half a teaspoon would be 1, 2 1/2. So half and 2. And half a teaspoon of celery seed. One, 2 1/2. And 1 tablespoon of garlic. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Does call for ground cayenne pepper. I don't find that necessary, especially since I'm not doing as much sugar. We're going to bring it to a boil. We're going to reduce, simmer for 5 minutes. So basically the sugar has a chance to, oh, it's been a long day, not evaporate, dissolve. canner double stacks pint jars. So these are half pints, and so I definitely can stack those. Even with water bathing, you have to have a barrier in between your stacks. So if you're going to stack them, you need to use something to in between your jars. You don't want to stack them right directly on top of one another. I'm going to put about, I don't know, half a teaspoon or so of garlic here in each jar before I get these filled with the candied jalapenos. This isn't a necessary step. It's not even part of the recipe that I'm using. This one anyhow, it is part of other recipes. And so I am going to add a little bit in here, not a lot though, because we don't want to throw off our acidity level, the ratio of the vinegar versus everything else we have in there. I'm going to try to do this quickly because I don't want jars cooling down very fast. So I'm going to swing this around, pull this closer to me. Let's see. I'm going to turn that off because it is well more than good and hot. Hopefully without burning myself, I can get it moved over. Oh, that's heavy. So you saw how those jalapenos kind of really sunk down into this pot. So started out looking like it was a whole big mess, didn't it? But we're good. Okay. Get my funnel here. I'm gonna start getting these filled with just jalapenos to the best that we can in the beginning, and then we'll go back and fill it with the brine. And we are going to keep, you know what, let me check. Is this an inch or a half an inch headspace? It actually says a quarter of an inch. So I'm still not going to really overfill with the actual jalapenos. I want to make sure everything is covered quite well with the vinegar brine. And we're basically just going to rinse and repeat, just a whole assembly line. I have another canner here behind me with pints. I did that for two reasons. One, I don't mind having pint jars on hand. We already know we, like the pints. That's what we currently use. I opted to try and do something different this year. Like I said, just not having a ton of leftover jars in the fridge. But I also knew, with this being a marathon type of a day, that I would be tired by the end of the day. And whatever, I've got 22 of these half pint jars in my double stacked canner. And I knew whatever's left over, I'm just gonna throw it in pints and be done. So we'll see what happens here at the end. Even if it's just brine, I am okay with that. Like I said, I love the brine just as much as I love the actual jalapenos. So it's my dog's dinner time, so you might hear her munching in the background. So this candied jalapeno recipe, now that we're doing this, I know it's a different recipe than what I've done in the past. And I know that because I pulled a jar from my shelf today. And I was looking at it thinking how pretty it looked. And then I'm looking at it a little bit more in depth thinking, well, that's gonna look different than the jars I'm doing today. So this way I kind of have it locked in. I can write my notes as to how well we enjoy it. And then if I want to try a different recipe next year, I can. But more importantly, I'll know which recipe I actually used this year. So the prior years has red pepper flakes in there. It actually has whole garlic cloves. So I think it even looks like it has mustard seeds, which would probably be phenomenal. And we really, really enjoy this. So we'll see how it comes out. I can tell you we're not going to hate it. I mean, that's for sure. I can also tell you that I may be regretting not adding more sugar. Not for the sweetness value, but because it's not as quite of a thick syrup like it would be, which I think is the whole point of having all of that sugar, is to really create like a syrup in there. But you know what? We're gonna like it all the same. It'll be fine. I did not taste it though because I already know it's gonna be super spicy. It's gonna kind of be hard to judge, I think. Maybe I will try it. That canner is turned up to start hopefully coming to a boil very soon. It needs to process for half pints are going to process for 10 minutes, which is what I have in that canner. My elevation time is going to process for 15 minutes. So once that comes to a boil, I'll set the timer for that. I've got to go get more rings, and we're going to finish out all of the pint jars in my other canner, and this will be done. They're singing to me. There you have it. 25 half pints. I have one whole pint that we ended up getting. And then the rest I would call pretty much just brine. I think that's a successful canning session. If you do ask me, this is one of our absolute favorite things to have on the pantry shelf at all times. So I'm really excited to get this one marked off the list. It's a lot of work. Doesn't feel like a lot of work if it's the only thing you're doing that day, but of course today was a marathon canning day and we did a lot of projects together here in this kitchen. So I hope you check out parts 3. And if you missed part 1, go and check that out. We had a lot of fun, did some really interesting things. And then I figured out on the 3rd canning session that I will be posting, was it worth my time and money? We will find out. It was part of my Azure haul. So if you watched that, you might have an idea of what it is I'm talking about. So that's it for tonight. I just love when I hear them pop. that's it for tonight. I will see you the next time I'm in this kitchen stocking the pantry. And pretty soon, we're gonna be going from the pantry to feeding my family. So I can show you exactly what I do with all of this food now that we've preserved it. But we have a couple more projects still yet to come. So I hope I'll see you here the next time I'm in my kitchen.